So what is tension? I think there's a million different ways that you could describe tension. I think that the way I like to describe it is it's like a string tying your reader to the story. And when you visualize it that way, then you can kind of get a picture for what can happen if the tension is too little. If you have too little tension, then it's going to bore your reader. And they're just not going to be all that interested in what's going on. They're going to be like, oh, like a squirrel. I'm going to go over there and see that instead of reading this book. And if you have too much tension, that can be just as bad, because it's like if you picture the string, if you pull it too tight, then obviously they're going to have to escape it and break away, because there can be way too much tension too. As you can see, he needs to break away from that story. So tension is about maintaining the balance between. You don't want to let the string too loose. You don't want to pull it too tight. You want to keep the reader drawn in without making it so intense that they have to escape and get a break from it. That's kind of your goal. And it doesn't really matter what kind of story you write with the tension. That's what you want in any kind of story. So what are the different kinds of tension? Anybody want to shout out an answer? I may or may not have prizes. Yeah. Romantic tension. Very good. You even got the first one. I don't know what would have happened if you'd gotten a different one. This is not real medicine. Don't take it as real medicine. Okay. It's actually mints, I think. Or something. Chocolates, maybe. Anyway, it's a surprise bottle. Yay. So romantic and relationship tension. Romantic is, obviously with a love interest. Relationship tension would be like, the tension in, between a daughter and a mother or a cousin or anything family-like conflict, stuff like that. Yeah. School tension. That's a good one. I think that would probably fall under relationships still.
Oh, sorry. They need to speak
Oh,
into the
I'm
mic.
sorry. I'll let you. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the tension between villains.
Okay, good. Different villains. And, yeah. Sorry.
Fight scenes and stuff, swords and stuff.
Fight scenes. That's very good. Very good. Those are all really good options, and I'm going to throw candy at you people. So some other ones I have is task and main plot, which would probably fall under the I think the fighting and the villains and stuff like that would fall under that one. You've got your main plot, the progression towards the goal, your task, will they be able to accomplish this, that kind of tension that builds throughout the story. And each subplot should have its own layers of tension. And then you have surprises and twists. When you throw something in there, that's going to obviously increase your tension. And mysteries and unanswered questions. There's the hovering question that a lot of books have that needs to be answered by your protagonist at some point in the story. Whether it's, will they be the hero that they can be, or what's in the black box, or whatever. So every scene should increase your tension. You should go from scene to scene and make sure that there's something happening in each scene to increase your tension. Now, when you have tension building like that throughout your entire story, then you have to release the tension somehow. Do you guys have some ideas for how to release tension? Yeah? Oh,
sorry. For me, I write really intense books. I just really like to do that. So I start out by, if the tension's too thick, I always maybe write a scene where one of my characters is going on a date with a friend, or maybe going to the mall or something. Kind of go do something fun where the tension is just broken off.
Yeah, that's very good. I'm going to throw this at you, and I hope I don't injure you in any way. Yes.
Answer the questions that it's been asking. Just give them glimpses of what the answer is, so that they keep reading to know the full answer, but the tension is kind of released.
Very good, very good. You can give them some answers to their questions, and relieve a little bit of the tension that way. Back here.
You could use comic relief, just have someone say something funny.
Good, comic relief. That's probably my favorite kind of way to release the tension because I'm sorry, I'm a terrible shot. Because when you have that kind of tension, where especially the kind I write, where you've got thriller, you've got life-threatening situations, it's when you're feeling that and then you laugh in the middle of it, like that feels so good, that release, it's cathartic. There are many different ways to increase tension. So let's talk about a couple different kinds. Do you guys have any ideas for how you can use your viewpoint to increase tension? As in like the point of view of your main character? Yeah?
So okay, if the main character is being hunted by assassins or something, then the person could be doing their thing, then you see the assassin moving in on them, and you know what's going to happen, and the main character doesn't know, and it's all getting scary and stuff.
Okay, good. So in that instance, we're talking about third-person point of view, probably. Yes, I made it. So third-person point of view is a great way to. I'll go to her in just a second. Sorry. Third-person point of view is a great way to increase tension because you can have outside influences that your reader knows about, but your protagonist does not. So that automatically amps up the tension big time. That's a great way to do it. Did you have a?
If you have two different first-person views, you could have one character know something, but the other character doesn't.
That's true. That's true. Different first person does the exact same thing that third person can do. Yeah.
There are many ways to increase tension when you're talking from the viewpoint of a person. Like you can say what they're feeling, how they're reacting, what they're thinking.
Right, exactly. And that's, when we're talking about first person, a book I just finished not too long ago is in first person present. So we're right in their head, right in the moment. And everything they're experiencing translates really well to the reader with first person. So that's, you get them right up there, close and personal with first person. And then, like you already said, with the third person, there's that added tension of the fact that the protagonist is not in the know and the reader is. Okay, so your stakes must be high. Can anybody give me a reason why the stakes would need to be high? Yeah.
If there's nothing going on, you aren't going to keep reading the story unless there's something that you care about. You have to care about the story, and if the main character cares about the stakes, then you're more likely to care about those stakes as well.
Right, exactly. Do you want me to pelt you with candy? You good? All right. Okay, so now does this mean that every story, in order for it to matter, that the world has to be at stake? No, it doesn't. I mean, it's their world. It's the protagonist's world that's at risk, whether it's, that the girl will lose the guy or that, the world's going to explode, literally. Either way, the stakes have to be just absolutely high for that character. And that's what I just said. So the reader has to know the stakes early on. They need to know what's at risk, what could be lost here. As soon as we know the goal, we need to know what happens if the goal is not achieved, because that way we can really invest and get on board with the character. Throw those wrenches. Every time that you throw a wrench into the works of your story and complicate it further, the tension gets amped up. Any pressure. You add a time clock, you complicate things. You add inside dilemmas. There should be new wrenches introduced into your story on a regular basis. New things that your protagonist was not looking for and your reader probably wasn't either. Those are the things that will just take it to a new level with the tension. Yeah.
Okay. So, the bad guys are going to do something in a certain amount of days, and they have to get there by this time to stop it.
Yeah. There's a lot of different kinds of time clocks. They can be literal clocks, like a bomb is going to go off, or they have a deadline to get something done, like you're talking about, before something catastrophic is going to happen. It can also be, if, in in Insomnia, the main character is dying from sleep deprivation. So that's a time clock too. If he doesn't find a way to survive or doesn't find a way to cure his problem, then he will die. That's another time clock. It's something that's hanging over that's going to happen if they don't accomplish a goal. So by the climax of the book, the protagonist's fate should just seem like it's impossible. Like, how is this ever going to happen? How can they possibly accomplish this? It should seem like there's just really almost no hope left. And the protagonist, the ones that you really want to get behind are the ones that don't give up. Anyway, even though it seems hopeless, they keep going. They keep fighting. Everybody loves Hermione because of this. Like, love it. You just want to sit there and watch it over and over and over again. And thanks to gifts, you can. I love it. Okay. Characters are crucial. Why are characters crucial to tension? Anybody? Yeah. Oh. Yes, go ahead.
The character is describing the tension, and they are living it.
Absolutely. The characters are the eyes through which we see the tension, so that's absolutely true. I don't think I can even throw that far, so I'm just not going to try. You can get some candy after. Anybody else? Did you have? Yeah.
Just that if you build really strong characters and you have their whole essence or whatever created, their lives can influence the tension or build it and decrease it just by what they do.
Absolutely. That's very true. Good job. Anybody else have any thoughts? There's one other thing I was looking for. No? Okay. So another reason that characters are crucial besides these two really good points are that they have to care about your character. Your reader has to care whether or not they die or whether or not they get the other, love interest or whether or not the world implodes. I've seen books where sometimes it might be okay if the world implodes on that book. So your character needs to be dynamic and interesting for your reader to connect with them to the point where they want them to succeed. And in order to do that, they have to have flaws. They have to be able to grow. Every character should have an arc, and in that arc, they have the opportunity to grow throughout the book, and it's that growth and that ability for them to move forward that readers connect to. Now, your antagonist is really important to tension because they're the ones who are throwing the wrenches a lot of the times. They're the ones who are making things worse and adding the tension. And they need to be able to outsmart your protagonist most of the time. It's really frustrating when you have an antagonist that is easy to defeat because then it's like, what was the point of this whole book if it was that easy? It shouldn't be easy. They should be able to outsmart your protagonist for most of the book, and then through that growth that your protagonist has, then they're able to finally overcome them. Be unpredictable. Do you guys like the stories where you can totally see everything coming every time that you turn the page? You know exactly what's going to happen next. It's easy, and it puts your character, or it puts your reader at ease, right? They are comfortable because they feel like they know what's coming next. But when you throw something new at them, and they're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming, then they're constantly, it amps up the tension even more, and that's almost a different level of tension because they're not entirely sure if they can trust their guts about what's going to happen next, their gut instinct. Also, during brainstorming, the first idea you come up with is usually the same idea that most people will come up with, and your reader will come up with. Usually your first idea is the obvious choice. And so a lot of times the second or third idea or 25th idea is the one that's really like, oh, that That would work really well here. It fits, everything lines up for it, but it's not the one that's expected. And that adds another level of tension. Have you guys heard of an unreliable narrator? Yeah? Okay. Love the unreliable narrator. It's when your narrator is either through lies or through perception or through just they're crazy sometimes. They don't really have a good idea of what's going on around them in what they're portraying to the reader. That's a very good means of adding tension also. So we don't want to predict what's coming next. Your reader shouldn't be able to do that. Don't be kind. As much as you love these characters that you've created and they're your babies and all of that, you want to take care of them, you can't take care of them. You have to throw them to the wolves and just then chuck coconuts at them or whatever. Just make it bad so that they really, really I don't know what kind of island this is where there's wolves and coconuts together. But either way, make it bad. That's a bad one, actually. That would be bad. The challenges you use and the way you use them are further ways to increase your tension. So you don't want to pile on too many challenges at once. You want to spread them out a little bit, usually, because that's when you put too many together, that's when you get that whole scenario where you pull them in too tight. Your reader, they need that break. They need the humor. They need the space in between. So challenges that will increase tension. Disorientation, right? Have you guys read the Hex Hall series? Any of you? Yeah, it's fantastic. Sophie is a witch in Hex Hall, and she gets sent to a witch's school because she does too many bad things, and so it's like a punishment really to be sent there. But then she's there with all these other witches and werewolves and vampires and all different kinds of things that she's always been with normal people in the normal world, and it's very disorienting for her. And that's a great way to increase tension. Isolation. Separate them from the ones that they rely on. If you notice, almost every single Harry Potter book, when it gets to the climax of the book, Ron and Hermione are not there. It's always Harry by himself. And he has to, even when at the end of, Goblet of Fire, he and Cedric get sucked in, go to the, graveyard, what's the first thing that happens? They kill Cedric. He's alone. He has to be alone. That's a great way, especially because the reader learns to rely on Ron and Hermione working out the problems with Harry, helping him figure things out. That happens throughout every book. But then at the climax of every book, he's alone. Misdirection. You draw your character's attention to one thing and let the reader see something else. This is something we talked about already with the third person a little bit. There's actually a book called Pivot Point that came out in February. So it's a new one, but it's by Casey West. And that one, she does it in a really interesting way. She has the main character, Addie, has the ability to, when she's given a choice, search out two different futures and look at what's going to happen if she makes one choice and what's going to happen if she makes another choice. And in that book, it alternates back and forth between the two different choices that she could make. And in that one, in one path, she knows who the bad guy is, and in the other path, she doesn't, and she interacts with him on this path. And so the reader knows what's going on, but she doesn't. So that's another interesting way to take it. So what is pacing? Anybody know what pacing is? What's a good definition of pacing?
Deciding when to put things and when not to put things.
Okay, good. When to put things in. That's good. Yeah?
How quickly things move around, where we get from one plot point to the other, how fast that happens or how slow that happens.
Yep. It's kind of the speed at which the book goes. Good. I'm going to try and throw this to you. We shall see how it goes. Good duck. Nice job. This is violent. I'm very sorry. Okay. So, so that's a good one. Anybody else? Okay. So, yes, in the context of the way that I think about it, I mean, I think those are all correct. But if you were talking about the thread, tying your reader to the book, then the pacing is like how tension, how the string is pulling the reader through. It's like if you visualize it almost like a fish on a line, right? You pull it too hard, the string breaks. You let it go too loose, it goes slack, and the fish can get away. And if you just reel it in constantly, then they're just kind of dragged in through the book until the end. Also, know what you're writing. Different kinds of genres will have different kinds of pacing and tension. Obviously, the pacing, like I said, in a thriller, and it's like a breakneck speed. It's very fast. It should, like my goal is that when somebody picks up my book to read it, they don't put it down until they read the whole thing, because they just can't. You know that feeling? You're reading, and you're just like, I'm supposed to go do that, but I just can't. Not right now. Like, that's what I want. Do I achieve it? I don't know. But I do my best. That's my goal. For romance, like, it's a little different, you know. Your pacing is going to be a little bit slower. Your tension is going to be a little bit more focused on the tension between the two characters. And it absolutely can still have the same kind of results where they don't want to put down the book. But it's a different kind of pacing. It's a different kind of tension. So obviously, you know, the romance is going to be focused differently. And every kind of, like, action adventure, like, you could really rank them. You know, like thriller, horror, stuff like that is going to be higher, you know, than like action adventure. And then, you know, you get like historical and just different things. Like, they all have their own kind of brand. So you need to know, you need to read in the genre that you're writing and other genres and kind of see the differences in the different pacings. Now, in a series, there's also going to be a difference in the pacing from book to book. It should amp up. Every book should increase in tension. And because you have not only, like the first book, you have the plot lines and the tension from the things going on in that book. In the next book, you have the tension from the series adding up. You know, you've got your story arc from the entire series, and then you've got your story arc from the book, and then you've got your character arc, and by the time you're done, you have like this mountain of arcs on top of each other. And the further you get in, the more of those you have, and so you have different layers of tension with each book. If you get it right, then hopefully the end result will look like this. Maybe that lady. She's really excited. I like her. Yeah. So questions. Let's talk a little bit about pacing and tension.
Can you give us just a general overview of your new Insomnia book?
Yeah. So a little more in depth. So like I said, it starts with your main character. His name's Parker. He's 17. It's a boy. Which was hard. That was a difficult challenge for me as a female. I have never been a man or a boy before. So I wrote it, and then I sent it to my friend's husband, and he read it, and he wrote back to me, and he said, so does your main character have a crush on his best friend, and his best friend's a boy? I was like, no. He doesn't. And he was like, okay. Because, like, teenage boys never compliment each other, like, ever. Like, that just doesn't happen. So I had to go back through and revise it. I had to learn to write from a boy perspective. So that was totally different. Plus, he kind of finds out that, like, the steps to, and this is real, like, sleep deprivation, as you go further and further into it, at some point you start to experience psychosis and start to like have hallucinations and delusions. And so as he gets further and further into the sleep deprivation state, things aren't always what they seem. And that was really fun. He does meet a girl, like the second chapter in, who, in her dreams, he can actually sleep for the first time ever. He can fall asleep. But then that adds a whole new series of complications, like we said about tension. We have this girl who he actually has to make eye contact with her last every day that he just met. It's hard to do that, obviously, so she kind of gets creeped out by him and thinks he's stalking her. And then she starts getting these emails that are threatening her, and she obviously thinks it's him. And so he has to try and prove his innocence and not turn into, like, a psycho on the way. So that's kind of the gist of it, yeah.
What, like, made you write about, like, kind of like the psychology of sleep and stuff like that sort of thing?
I love psychology. My major, like, not every writer, like, majors in English. I majored in communications and marketing, which is really, really helpful, actually, as an author. It's great to be able to know how to market myself. And my minor was psychology. And my favorite part was abnormal psychology, because I really liked the twisted stuff. I was like, this is so interesting. Look at that. And so I have kind of pulled on that through my books. Like, I think it's really fascinating that you don't get enough sleep, and therefore your brain starts to create, like, whole different things that are happening that aren't really happening, you know. And it's a fascinating thing, the way that sleep affects your brain. And it doesn't affect your muscles in the same way, especially him, because his body is, like, resting, like he's asleep. So his body is fine. It's just his brain that's still awake. He goes in and sees other people's dreams, and he feels the emotions of the dreamer, and it's exhausting, you know, mentally. And so his body, like, he can still do all the things that muscle memory allows you to do, but he can't, like holding on to a pair of keys is just so hard to do when your brain is just fried, you know. So I always found that really fascinating. Love psychology. Here.
So if you reach a point in your book where you realize that the problem that you're dealing with, that what's happening in the book is starting to be boring, and it's boring you, how do you know if you need to solve that problem, move on to something new, or just throw a wrench into that problem itself?
Okay, good question. A lot of the time it's about analyzing your plot and figuring out what's boring you. Is it about the romantic tension? Is it about, you know, is it just amping up the tension in that particular scene? Is it that scene? A lot of the times for me, it ends up being 20 pages before that scene, where I went wrong somewhere along the path. And it's a lot of brainstorming, sitting down, taking a look at and saying, okay, and sometimes it's just writing out chapters and saying, okay, if I write it this way, do I feel better about it, you know? Because if you are bored, I guarantee you your reader will be bored. It's not, it goes together, it goes hand in hand. So it's kind of something where and everybody has a different process for it, but you got to try different things until you find the right one for you.
What are some of the complications of writing a quick-paced and tension-filled novel?
What are some of the complications? Okay, so some of the complications of writing a quick-paced and tension-filled novel are that you can scare yourself. I was writing one night, and it was late at night, and I thought I heard something, and it was like this really super scary scene. And I went into my son's room, and I could see the outline of a man on his window, like on his blinds. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And so I walked over, and I, like, peeked around the edge and looked out, and it was a guy who was standing across the street, but because of the light across the street, it was shining clear across to his window. I was like, okay, all right, everything's fine. And then at that exact second, my cat ran into the room and hit the door so hard it flew open and banged against the wall. And I screamed at the top of my lungs. And my son sat up in bed and started screaming. And it was like absolute chaos. So that kind of stuff can happen. It's also really fun because, like, I get into the writing and I'm like, I feel the tension that the reader feels a lot of the time, and I'm just like, I should stop writing. I know my family wants to eat, but I can't right now. We really like takeout. We've got like a whole wall full of like takeout menus because we can just order them when I can't stop typing. So.
Okay, so coming back to pacing, what speeds it up and what slows it down?
What speeds up pacing and what slows it down? If your pacing is too high, too fast, and you want to slow it down, a couple different ways to do it are to insert the things that we talked about that break the tension, like the comic relief, the scene that takes you away from whatever's causing the tension. So let's say it's the main plot and the villain or something that's causing the tension, and then your main character has to go do like a school thing or a date or something that takes them away from the main tension a little bit. Now, some situations that doesn't work. Obviously, if they're like sitting there and they're like trying to, disarm the bomb, they're like, oh, I gotta go on my date. I'll be back. That doesn't work, obviously. So you have to kind of make sure that it fits in with your story. And sometimes if the tension is too high, you have to take out something from before. It's not that scene that has to change. It's earlier that something needs to be resolved before that scene starts. Or, you fix something, fix one of the problems that's hanging over their head before that scene starts. If it comes to amping up the tension, then a lot of the same, it's the reverse, you know what I mean? Take out some of the humor. And a lot of it, like if you're talking about pacing, a lot of it is in the actual writing, like the actual sentences that you're writing. When I'm writing like the most intense sentences, or most intense scene of the book, a lot of times I use shorter, choppier sentences. I break them up a lot. I have everything move really quickly so that it's just like bam, bam, bam. And I also throw a lot of sensory perception at the protagonist at once. They can hear the water dripping down the wall. They can feel the slime on the wall behind their fingers. They can smell like dampness in the air. Like a lot of sensory perception coming at once. Like a lot of those kinds of things will amp up the tension in a specific scene without amping up the tension, once they leave that building. Does that make sense? So a lot of it's like the way that you structure your sentences, the kind of power words that you use in your description, that kind of stuff is all stuff that will heighten the tension as you're going through a scene. Yeah.
How can you tell if you have like too much tension in a scene or not enough tension in a scene?
Okay. So sometimes you can feel it. I think that a lot of the times you, especially with too much, you can't because you're not necessarily like your truest observer, So I'm a big fan of critique groups and beta readers. You guys know what beta readers are? Yeah, probably. Beta readers are people, there's alpha readers and beta readers, and I think every writer describes the difference between them differently. For me, alpha readers are people that I send like a chapter at a time as I'm writing. So like it's super rough, really not like any kind of final format, and I'll send it to them and they'll give me just feedback. And usually I get people that are really good cheerleaders for alpha readers because I don't want somebody coming back, oh man, you suck, this sucks, I don't know what you're doing, because then I'm like, oh, and I stop writing. So alpha readers are cheerleaders. I don't expect them to critique it. I expect them to tell me how awesome I am, because that's really what you need when you're in that writing mode. When you're in editing mode, that's when you need the people that are like, hey, these are your problems. And when I go into editing mode, that's when I have my beta readers. They read the entire book, and then they come back to me. I know a lot of people use critique groups, which are really great because you've got several different people giving you feedback. And those usually you have a chapter at a time or something like that, depending on how you guys structure your critique group. But those people are the ones that will be able to tell you. And every group, like our critique group that I use, there's somebody who's like excellent at dialogue. I'm the tension and pacing person. There's another girl who's really, really good with scenery and setting. And so like I rely on certain people for help with certain things. And it's good to find those people so that you guys can like grow together. It's a excellent, excellent thing. We've got a couple of minutes left. If I throw this, it might explode. I'm just going to bring it. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Yeah.
All right. How do you create empathy in third person?
Okay. Creating empathy is it doesn't, in any kind of, obviously it's easier in first person because you're right there in their head. Third person, though, it's still a lot of the same characteristics that you need with your character. Your reader has to know what the consequences are. They need to know what the stakes are. They need to know their goal, what they're trying to accomplish. But they also need to have something about them that draws your reader in, whether it's, Harry Potter is, dropped off on somebody's front porch and on the Dursley's front porch and his parents are killed. Like that automatically draws sympathy from your reader. Different situations like that, different characteristics. I have a side character in Insomnia that is hilarious. He's ridiculous. He wears like almost entirely shirts that make statements on them, and they are always appropriate to the situation. And he's by far everyone's favorite character. He's funny. He's got different kinds of things like that really endear him to the reader. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. It all depends on kind of the situation that your character is in and whether it's appropriate for it to be the humor or the background or the situation. Putting up with hardships with strength and dignity is another way to endear your main character to the reader. There's a lot of different ways to do it. It's all about how you portray your main character so that they bring that reader in. And you can come get a pill bottle after because I'm not going to throw it because I really think I will rain down mints on everyone. It's not going to be pretty. So, any other questions? I think we're probably supposed to be done. Yeah. Okay. So this is my cover. It's coming June 10th, and my site, my blog. I've got different kinds of writing tips and stuff on my blog too, and I do query critiques every Friday. Random people send in queries, and I critique them on my blog every Friday. So if you're looking at writing a query at some point, that's a great place to find it. Okay, thank you so much, you guys. You're awesome.